Okay, here we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Reyes, Program Manager here at ABNY. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's policy brief featuring BJ Jones, Executive Director of New York, moderated by Deborah Mirabal, member of the Young Professionals Steering Committee. Deborah is the Chief Operating Officer of Global Research and Investment Strategy at the Carlyle Group. Prior to joining Carlyle, she was a Vice President at Goldman Sachs, where she was Chief of Staff to the Global Head and COO of the Global Investment Research Division. Towards the end of the program, we're going to shift to a live Q&A, so please make sure you submit your questions as we go throughout. I want to thank you all once again for joining us, and thank you, BJ, for taking the time to address our young professionals. With that said, and without further ado, I'll pass the screen to our YP host, Deborah, to introduce BJ. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. Welcome, ABNY Young Professionals, to today's ABNY Policy Brief event. Today, we are here to discuss the new, unquotes, New York plan and how the city is reimagining its commercial districts as 24/7 destinations, fostering the best places to live, work, and play while promoting equitable economic growth. A little background for those of you who may not be familiar with the topic. The new New York panel was launched in May 2022 by Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Eric Adams to examine the future of New York City and the region's economy. Over 6 months, the panel created a set of 40 proposals intended to make New York City the best place to work and serve as a roadmap for the city's future. The governor and mayor announced these proposals in December 2022 as the Making New York Work for Everyone action plan. And today, our featured speaker is BJ Jones, an experienced leader with a remarkable track record of public service and extensive contributions to our New York City's urban development. I'd like to share a little bit about his impressive bio. So BJ worked at the Battery Park City Authority for 9 years, serving as president and CEO since 2018, and previously as chief administrative officer. At BPCA, he expanded and diversified community program offerings, extended affordability protections, launched new public art installations, and initiated projects to accelerate climate adaptation efforts. He has worked in city and state government for 20 years, including as deputy director of the Mayor's Office of Operations and assistant commissioner of strategic planning and implementation at the New York City Department of Buildings. In his tenure working for the city, Jones helped implement one of the city's first online permitting systems, oversaw the first overhaul in nearly 4 decades of the city's building code, and worked on the recovery effort in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. He serves on the board of the Frederick O'Reilly Hayes Prize Foundation, which, in partnership with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation, annually recognizes emerging public sector leaders. Jones earned a Master of Applied Positive Psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, a Master of Public Administration from American University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Management from Gettysburg College. And today we're honored to have him as our keynote speaker. And we look forward to his insights on the new New York plan and how it's shaping the future of our city. Please join me in welcoming BJ for his presentation, followed by a moderated Q&A and questions from the audience.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I am going to share my screen. Good morning, everybody. Okay, let's get started. Thanks again to ABNY for having me here today. I'm really happy to be able to give you an update on the new New York, and so appreciate having the opportunity to be part of this webinar. So in this presentation, I'm going to provide some context on the new New York panel's work, review the major components of the plan, and focus mostly on discussing progress that has been made since its inception this past December, and then looking forward to answering some questions as time permits. So, as you might imagine, the new New York plan has a lot of different aspects to it. So I'm going to cover a broad array of initiatives today. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to keep it pretty high level to cover as much content as possible. If there's anything you take away from today's webinar, I really hope it's a few things. Number one is that the new New York panel released this report, Making New York Work for Everyone, outlining 40 initiatives to help spur the city's economic recovery. So if you haven't seen the Making New York Work for Everyone report, I really encourage you to dive into it. In addition to traditional areas like office vacancy rates, incentives for businesses, and strategies for job creation, the plan also addresses more fundamental questions, from transportation to housing to the need for great public space to childcare. The effort is an example of unprecedented collaboration between the governor and mayor, the state, and the report wasn't designed to sit on a shelf, and it hasn't. Progress has been made across all of the three major New York goal areas. And finally, there's more work ahead. We've made a lot of significant progress that I'll talk about, but our work is not yet finished. And you can learn more at newnypanel.com, see the report, and also check out news of recent accomplishments that I've talked about if you'd like to learn more. Okay, so let's step back and talk a little bit about the context from which this report came to fruition. The pandemic changed everything with how we live, work, and play, and as a result, new trends have been introduced in the city. It's changed how and where people work. And both employers and employees have new expectations for how many days per week they're working from the office. This fact has had big impacts on office space, but also on commercial ecosystems in our business districts that traditionally revolved around office workers. And it has potentially huge implications on tax revenue too, since business districts are the fiscal foundation that cities are built on. This revenue powers government spending on physical and social infrastructure that touches every New Yorker, from roads and public education to senior centers and libraries. And we also know that the pandemic exacerbated existing inequality, impacting historically disadvantaged communities the most. So let's look back to 2022 and some of the indicators at the time of the report's release. Business district recovery was lagging with citywide impacts. The city was down over 100,000 jobs. Some of the biggest gaps in sectors that disproportionately affect low-income New Yorkers, like retail, accommodation, and food services. Employment dropped below 6%, but remained higher for Black and Hispanic Latino New Yorkers. Subway ridership in November of last year averaged 62% of pre-pandemic levels on weekdays, compared with 70% on weekends. And in fiscal year 23, New York collected $343 million less in property tax annual revenue from offices compared to earlier years. So there was, in fact, at risk of stating the obvious, a real need to mobilize. And that's what both the city and the state, the leadership of Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams, have been all about. And so, recognizing that New York City's success over time has been defined by our ability to convert crisis into opportunities, Mayor Adams and Governor Hochul saw a similar opportunity here to reimagine New York. And so the mayor and governor, as Deborah said, convened a panel of 59 civic leaders and industry experts under the stewardship of Dan Doctoroff and Rich Bury. The goal was to leverage a new moment of city and state alignment to build a coordinated city and state policy agenda and action plan for the equitable recovery of the city and the interconnected downstate region. The panel's initial charge was reviving business districts, but the panel quickly realized that the solutions would need to address a wider range of interconnected challenges affecting all New Yorkers. And so we didn't need to just make New York the best place to work. We need to make New York the best place, period. And so the report was released with the 40-point action plan organized under 3 goals, as you can see here. It's multidimensional and it's interconnected. It goes beyond traditional economic development levers and acknowledges that there's no single silver bullet for recovery. And fundamentally, it seeks not only recovery, but also evolution so that New York City comes back stronger and better primed for the new world that we live in. Some of the initiatives require legislative changes, some additional budget, and certainly agency action at the city and the state level. The 40-point action plan is organized under these 3 goals, and that's how I'm going to organize the rest of the presentation as I talk a little bit more about what we've been up to since the report was released. So the first goal is reimagining New York's business districts as vibrant 24/7 destinations. This is about shedding old ideas about single-use business districts and supporting their evolution into great places where people live, work, and play. Now, when the report came out, this idea might not be viewed as rocket science, but it's not, for example, the way Midtown has traditionally been approached. It is likened to the strategy in Lower Manhattan post 9/11. And so the report has 4 interconnected strategies to achieve this goal. And so here you can see those different strategies associated with Goal 1, reimagining New York City's business districts. There's 17 of the 40 specific initiatives in this category. And I'm going to talk a little bit in each of these buckets about some of the progress that has been made. First, there's a focus on making sure our city and state regulatory environment create enough flexibility for our land use and building use to evolve from the modern context. This is about making sure that our business districts can become more residential while still remaining primarily global centers of commerce, and also making sure we have updated and common sense rules governing the use of commercial space. One of the items I'll highlight here is residential conversions, of course. We're keen on ensuring that outdated office buildings can be converted to more in-demand uses, such as desperately needed homes for New Yorkers. The ability to repurpose existing buildings for alternative use enables New York City's economy to adapt more quickly and sustainably to change. And so the report has focused on 3 main points, spanning the range of buildings eligible for the most flexible conversion regulations, making existing conversion regulations work better, and providing financial incentives for affordable housing and childcare facilities. So, as part of the progress, following just on the heels of the new New York report's release, the Office Adaptive Reuse Study Task Force released recommendations to help facilitate the adaptive reuse of outdated office buildings to suitable and productive uses, such as housing, while supporting the vibrancy of the city's business districts as centers of commerce. To further use every tool in the city's toolbox to enable conversions of offices and to create much needed new housing, Mayor Adams launched a new office conversions accelerator comprised of experts across from city government to work with office building owners to advance conversion opportunities. Led by Get Stuff Built Executive Director Rob Holbrick, who we like to say has the best title in government. The accelerator will convene representatives from City Hall, City Planning, the Department of Buildings, Department of Housing Preservation and Development, the Board of Standards and Appeals, and the Landmarks Preservation Commission, and others to marshal the city's resources to assist owners with complex conversion projects. Not long ago, on October 30th, the Department of City Planning kicked off the public review process for the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity proposal, which is a set of citywide zoning changes that will further fuel the city's ongoing economic success and pave the way for a more inclusive future. Together, the 18 proposed changes will bolster the city's industrial sectors, revitalize commercial corridors, foster vibrant neighborhoods, and support growing industries such as life sciences, nightlife, amusements, and urban agriculture. This past May, the New York City Economic Development Corporation, EDC, and the New York City Industrial Development Agency launched the Manhattan Commercial Revitalization Program, otherwise known as MCOR. This program will be able to provide financial assistance in the form of tax incentives to support transformative renovations of aging commercial office buildings located in Manhattan south of 59th Street. The program is intended to help building owners decrease vacancy and attract world-class tenant companies who are increasingly seeking high-quality, amenity-rich office spaces. Second, a key catalytic intervention is the investment in beautiful, permanent public space. This is about reclaiming street space for pedestrians and creating a world-class network of landscape public spaces. It's a global best practice and can be transformational for business districts. We think in particular about how new great public spaces serve multiple objectives. They make business districts more attractive as a residential neighborhood. They make the commute more inviting and safer through our major transportation gateways, creating more outdoor convening space for workers that now highly value open area spaces. In February, to that end, New York City welcomed our first ever Chief Public Realm Officer. Ya-Ting Liu has been focused on delivering a couple components of Mayor Adams' Working People's Agenda, executing a plan to invest $375 million to create and expand high-quality spaces in all 5 boroughs, which includes the Broadway Vision Plan, full reconstruction of Jamaica Avenue, and so much more. She and the team have been really busy as we've announced a range of investments. In addition to the Broadway Vision Plan on the 140th anniversary of Brooklyn Bridge, we announced revitalized space in Chinatown, reimagining Fifth Avenue from Bryant Park to Central Park, we just announced a study that showed that open streets, speaking of Fifth Avenue, really does boost economic activity by millions of dollars. And so there's been a lot of public realm work that's happening across the 5 boroughs. Okay, another component of this goal is improving quality of life. And so addressing quality of life issues has a couple of components, as you can see here. In July, the city unveiled Get Sheds Down, sweeping overhaul of rules governing sidewalk construction sheds and scaffolding that will remove these eyesores from city streets more quickly while redesigning and reimagining those that are needed. In September, the City Planning Commission's vote in favor of the City of Yes for carbon neutrality, a set of 17 citywide zoning changes occurred. And this is the first of 3 City of Yes zoning proposals out of the gate, with the economic opportunity one following it, and I'll mention housing opportunity in a bit. So this one is now before the council, which is very exciting. Also in September, the Department of Small Business Services announced that the city would award $4.8 million in a series of multi-year grants to 44 community-based development organizations to facilitate innovative and community-focused solutions to improve the city's commercial corridors, again, in neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. These grants provide money to design, produce, and install customized and creative lighting grants in the city, and so much more to help CDDOs address commercial improvements. In October, the Department of Sanitation opened up a new front in the city's war on rats, launching a plan to containerize waste at approximately 95% of residential properties across the 5 boroughs, and also introduced new litter baskets. And this innovative design, which has started appearing on street corners across New York City, has now been named one of Time's best inventions of 2023. Finally, the city has taken another major step forward to advance dining out New York City, this city's permanent outdoor dining program and the largest in the country. We have launched a public outreach and engagement campaign to solicit feedback on new proposed rules that will give restaurant owners and community members clear guidance that they need for outdoor dining to become a permanent staple of the city's streets. And then the final component of this goal is offering new reasons to go to business districts. So while we strive to create active 24/7 business districts with vibrant public realms, the new New York plan also acknowledges that some of them need a shot in the arm when it comes to activation, especially in the immediate term. And so we want to foster activities that help provide new reasons to go to business districts now. And here are some of the examples of how that can be done in a tangible way. The Department of Transportation announced 34 open streets this past year, including 13 new locations. And the Department of Cultural Affairs was allocated the highest amount ever to support cultural organizations and programming throughout the city. There's also a great public art program, and you can see some examples of that. That is spearheaded also by the Department of Transportation through their asphalt art activations, art display case exhibits, and artventions initiatives. There's also community commissions as well, where neighborhoods and stakeholders can submit ideas through an RFP process that we're just completing, and so we can identify new opportunities where activations can help make neighborhoods even more vibrant. And now let's talk a little bit about goal number 2, making it easier for New Yorkers to get to work. This is obviously about improving commutes to Manhattan and strengthening employment hubs and workspaces across the 5 boroughs, so people have the option to work closer to home. And here you can see the initiatives that are tied to this component of the new New York plan. There is a recognition here that the future of work does have a hybrid aspect to it. And so we need to find ways to reduce the burden of the commute for people who are coming into our business districts, while at the same time finding ways to support folks that are going home, that are going to work in employment hubs elsewhere and also remotely. And so one of the key tenets of this is increasing the supply of mass transit options. A big piece of this stemmed from the governor announcing meaningful and significant changes to how we support public transit across New York and make our transportation system safer and more reliable. The most recent budget provided the MTA, which is the nation's largest transit system, which should be no surprise, a stable long-term financial plan as it continues to rebound from the pandemic. The MTA also announced the accelerated pace of completion of accessibility projects across the New York City subway system, and announcing the opening of several fully accessible stations in the city. Also, the city and state heralded the opening of the new Grand Central Madison terminal in February. And the state announced that the Long Island Railroad surpassed 1 million paying customers traveling in and out of that terminal in the spring. And then also, I should note here with the map you can see at the beginning, recently the city announced a historic expansion of our greenways, filling gaps in other in our outer borough greenway network to create 60 miles of greenway corridors. And so through this expansion, we'll build more than 40 miles of new protected bike infrastructure. Another piece of the puzzle here is reducing demand for cars and trucks. I'm sure many of you are following congestion pricing as it moves forward. Also, with the explosion in home deliveries and growing range of transportation modes on city streets, curb space has become increasingly sought after and competitive and also chaotic. So the curb management plan announced in September includes 10 steps to better design and manage the curb lane to reflect the increasingly wide range of needs of residents, workers, visitors, business owners, and all New Yorkers. And as part of that, we're going to be doing a smart curb pilot with the Columbus Avenue bid on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Also, this past summer, the city started testing local delivery hubs for moving deliveries from trucks and sustainable forms of transportation, with over 80% of New Yorkers receiving at least one package per week. DOT issued a report detailing our continued rapid installation of loading zones to meet e-commerce demands, and more to come as we endeavor to develop alternative freight delivery models. And then the other big piece of this is investing in employment hubs. And again, as another example of city and state collaboration, just this past August, the mayor and governor, EDC, and community leaders unveiled a vision for the redevelopment of the historic Kingsbridge Armory with a $200 million investment in economic opportunities for the Bronx. Following that, just in September, EDC released a request for proposals for developers on how to operate the armory, which is one of the largest armory buildings in the world, that contains approximately 570,000 square feet of space. And then also very exciting, the city, along with the Trust for Governors Island and Stony Brook University, unveiled the New York Climate Exchange, a transformative vision for a first-in-the-nation climate research, education, and jobs hub on Governors Island that will create thousands of permanent jobs and $1 billion in economic impact for the city. And in April, the mayor and our terrific city planning director and commissioner Dan Garodnick unveiled the Downtown Brooklyn and Fort Greene Eds and Meds framework, which will promote and guide the area's economic recovery and continued inclusive growth as a vibrant 24/7 neighborhood. And I should also mention too, a little bit about resiliency here, the FIDI Seaport. We also have to think about not just how to invest in kind of developing and expanding employment hubs, we need to protect them. And so the resiliency measures along the FIDI Seaport are an important part of that component as well. And then the final bucket that I'll close with today is goal number 3, generating inclusive, future-focused growth. This is about growth of jobs and innovation and breaking down barriers to economic mobility. So you can see the range of initiatives here for this important category as part of the Making New York Work for Everyone plan. It's about diversifying our economy to make sure we're more resilient to future shocks, while also making sure that we are investing in future-focused sectors. It's also about acknowledging that we need to confront the housing crisis head on. And last but certainly not least, this goal is about ensuring that access to opportunity is fair and equitable. It's about removing barriers to labor force participation, aligning workforce development with real industry needs of the future, and creating better business opportunities for MWBE businesses and more. So the first category is the hub for future industries and innovation. Just this past week, EDC and Cornell Tech, with a number of partners from the private sector and business improvement districts and BSD and beyond, announced the launch of Pilot NYC to advance New York City as the hub for global innovation. And that means a roadmap to streamline processes, collaborate with the private sector, and tap into the creativity of New Yorkers to become one of the world's most important places to pilot and scale urban innovation, whether it be electric vehicle charging to building decarbonization and more. Has 3 strategies, which you can read about in the report, which is online: bolstering the city's innovation capacity, pursuing procurement modernization to help facilitate the testing and scaling of new technologies, and enhancing the infrastructure for urban startups through a pilot network of accelerators and dedicated pilot sites. In September, also connected with that, EDC announced the activation of one of the city's flagship assets, the Brooklyn Army Terminal in Sunset Park, for climate innovation pilot projects, allowing companies to test and scale their technologies in live environments. Just yesterday, perhaps you heard the great news about the opening of Civic Hall at Union Square, a tech and digital hub training New Yorkers and creating an inclusive talent pipeline for family-sustaining jobs in the city's tech sector. Okay, and now let's talk about, really one of the most, if not the most important issue that the New New York panel focused on, and that's ensuring that workers have access to housing. There's more to do, but there's been some important progress that's been made. In September, the Adams administration launched an urgent, groundbreaking effort to tackle the city's persistent and severe housing shortage and enduring affordability crisis by enabling the creation of a little more housing in every neighborhood, making New York City a city that working people can once again afford to live in. And so this is all centered around the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity proposal, which would help the New Yorkers who have built this city afford to stay here and raise their families here by facilitating the creation of an additional 100,000 homes. Also, in August, the city had announced landmark progress to tackle the city's affordable housing crisis. In fiscal year 2023, the administration produced 26,682 affordable homes through new construction and preservations deals, thanks to HPD, HDC, and NYCHA, a 22% increase over the previous year. Also, notably, just last week, Governor Hochul signed legislation to build and preserve more affordable, energy-efficient housing in New York City, authorizing New York City to adopt a new affordable housing rehabilitation program to replace the former J51 program, giving New York City more flexibility to provide loans and grants for affordable housing and other related investments, and increasing the New York City Housing Development Corporation's bonding capacity. And then finally, we have the last strategy, last but not least, of the new New York plan, which is ensuring growth and access to opportunity is fair. And there's a couple of key components to this: workforce development, childcare, and supporting MWBE businesses among them. Some of the accomplishments to date have included, in July, the mayor announced a new two-part investment to support career advancement for people with disabilities, and expand access to internships, training seminars, jobs, future careers, and financial counseling. This included launching the Center for Workplace Accessibility and Inclusion that will address the structural challenges many people with disabilities face when pursuing a career. In June, the mayor unveiled Pathways to an Inclusive Economy, a blueprint for making significant improvements in talent development, job training, and employment services across the 5 boroughs. You can check out jobready.nyc.gov for access to job training programs and more. In February, the city, led by Small Business Services, hailed the successful rollout of the New York City Small Business Opportunity Fund. Just in the first 3 weeks since the fund's launch, over 10,000 small businesses submitted applications for low interest rate loans, made possible by a public-private partnership between the city, Goldman Sachs, MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, and Community Development Financial Institutions. And also earlier this year, the city announced the first ever Mayor's Office of Childcare, focusing on making sure families have access to equitable, high quality, and affordable early education and care. And so that office is coordinating with a range of agencies to help expand access and make it easier for families and businesses who help provide childcare. And so that's a high-level overview of the progress we've been making as we've endeavored to advance the new New York plan. And as you might imagine, based on everything I've talked about, this is an all hands-on deck moment. It's a team effort, and there are a tremendous amount of dedicated public servants involved who are leading the charge at a range of agencies. Many, but not all, are listed here just to give you a sense of really the breadth of resources that are dedicated to this important work at the city and state level. And I should also note, as I've mentioned periodically throughout the presentation, partnerships and collaboration between the public and private sectors has been really important too. There's a lot of organizations that are also helping advance the Making New York Work for Everyone agenda, because there's so many stakeholders that, of course, have a vested interest in helping New York City thrive. And so, let's talk a little bit about where we are today. The good news is that on October 19th, the mayor announced that the city had set a record high for the total number of both public and private sector jobs in city history, with 4.7 million total jobs. And so, that's a really important milestone, as is the labor force participation rate. But as I said at the outset, our work isn't finished. There's a lot to do. The mayor noted it himself, saying our work will never be complete until these employment opportunities are shared equitably by New Yorkers in every community. And so in the months ahead, we will be implementing even more policies to help our small businesses grow, attract more employers from around the world, and put New Yorkers on a path to a family-sustaining career. And so there's been a lot of progress since the New York panel put forth their recommendations in December. But we do need to continue our hard work to see these initiatives through in order to make New York work for everyone. We're going to continue to need a broad coalition of leaders, organizations, and everyday New Yorkers to help push this plan forward. Many of these initiatives are common sense, but we can't take their implementation for granted. We ultimately want to ensure that New York City isn't just recovered, but adapts to meet the moment and thrives in this new era. And so with that, I look forward to taking a few questions. Thank you.
BJ, thank you so much for your insights. This was really fascinating to learn about, and we're excited to see some of these developments in our city. So to start, we would love to hear a little bit from you. If you could briefly share a personal anecdote or experience that has had a profound impact on your perspective and approach to city planning and development. What motivates you to continue to contribute to the betterment of New York City?
Yeah, that's a great question. Two things come to mind. First of all, both of my parents were public school teachers. And so that dedication to public service, I think, was infused in me and my sister too at a very young age. And so I think that, doing good where you can, while you can, has always been really important to me. More recently on, more kind of specific note, I think that I'm informed a lot these days by my experience in the recovery effort after Hurricane Sandy. That was really devastating, and it was really hard. And, I think that it kind of helped teach me even further, kind of firsthand, this need that, we need to respond to the moment, to challenges and crises. There are fires that you have to put out, but you also have to take a long view to see what else can you proactively do, because unfortunately we know that, having been here through, 9/11, the financial crisis, Hurricane Sandy, the pandemic, and more, that we really need to also think long-term about strengthening the city's resilience through policy and operational changes, just to help us navigate the challenges that will come down the pike later. I would also say to that end too, that, it also showed me, and I have seen this time and time again, just how dedicated public servants in the city are, and they don't get the credit they deserve, whether they're dealing with meeting challenges in the moment or planning for long-term structural change.
Thank you. Given your experience in city and state government, can you highlight some of the key lessons you've learned about effective urban planning and development that could be a valuable guide for other cities as they look to revitalize their commercial districts and promote inclusive growth?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that, it is really important to have a plan. That's one of the things that I think is so important about this work is that, the mayor and governor, by bringing this panel together, really helped develop this framework for what the city wanted to do. And I think that that really helps in outlining, our values and priorities for what we need to tackle. And so I think that kind of strategic direction is really important. I think that, what the new New York is all about, um, but it's really important to really keep resilience in mind and not just as a climate adaptation strategy. We use the word resilience a lot when we're talking about climate adaptation, but I really think about, urban resilience more broadly as a very important policy. We really need to think about what it will take to enable New York and other cities to be successful for the long term. And that's why I think, this combination of strategies in the new New York is so important. It's looking at economic development, but it's also looking at housing and childcare, workforce, and public transit and the public realm and more. So I think that this recognition that there are a lot of components that need to be considered is also key.
Thank you. And we did receive a number of audience Q&A. Goes to show this is a very popular session. So I'm going to switch over to those now. So I guess to start, how will the city support and champion place-based partners like park conservancies, business improvement districts, and merchant associations to help invigorate neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was saying towards the end of the presentation, is that this is an all hands on deck moment. And so partners like that are enormously helpful. And so, we have been and we need to continue to engage partners like the ones mentioned in this question to help us advance these projects. I think, whether it's in neighborhood parks or neighborhood business improvement districts, those folks can really help extend our reach as we endeavor to implement the new New York plan. And so they can help us, but we also need to support them and engage these partners every step of the way too.
Great. Also, similar question. How can young adult New Yorkers, such as those on this call, who might have a clear vision on how to revitalize their commercial corridors but lack the tools to do so, how can they get involved in shaping their communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really important to be engaged in whatever way you can. And so if you can find ways through community-based organizations, community board, of course, but every neighborhood has different organizations that support the community, and I think finding those organizations in your neighborhood and supporting them is really important. And I would also say too, for the folks on the call, that if you haven't considered a career in public service yet, that you would really consider that too. There's a lot of talent in New York City, and there's a lot of great work in government to be done, and not just advancing, the things I've mentioned in this plan, but so much more. And so, whether it's in volunteer work or in actual public service employment, help any way you can.
Thank you. Can you further explain the structure and functions of the new New York panel? For example, how and when does it convene? What does your day-to-day look like as the executive director?
Yeah, so the panel was formed, as you had mentioned, midway 2023, and the focus of their effort initially was developing this report. And now there's an opportunity here to engage the panel further, along with a range of other stakeholders to help advance this plan. So a lot of this, is keeping the panel apprised on our progress for sure, but also figuring out how we can mobilize to get some of these initiatives over the finish line, like with the City of Yes initiatives, and also thinking about the upcoming legislative session in the state, but also looking for opportunities to cultivate more public and private partnerships. So I think that's where these stakeholders have been really helpful. In terms of my day today, yeah, it's no 2 days are the same. The New York universe is a big one to get your arms around. And so it's a combination of engaging stakeholders, facilitating, management of projects, and charting priorities for the year ahead, and talking to young professionals at ABNY.
Thank you. Is there a public safety initiative in place that shares with bikers, pedestrians, and especially drivers that our streets, now that our streets are shared and mixed use?
Yeah, so I think first of all, public safety is such an important component of New York City's ability to thrive, as it's mentioned at the beginning of the New York report. And in terms of what you're talking about, as it comes to transportation and the multiple modes now on our streets, I think that that's where some of the efforts that are outlined in the New York report, but DOT is focused on, are really important. Expanding bikeway infrastructure, and taking a close look at curb management and how we can be more innovative in how we use the curb, from a safety perspective, an operational perspective, and more. And so I think looking at those two initiatives in particular in the New York plan speak to that.
Thanks. Were there any efforts supporting regional manufacturing?
One of the things that the New York talks about is, it contemplates kind of the link between New York and the greater region, because we want our business districts to thrive, and we recognize that is enabled in part not just by people who live and work in New York City proper, but people who live just outside of New York. And so, that's where I think the investments in public transportation are really important, because we need to invest to make it easier for everyone who's coming in to New York City to work, and we need to take advantage of all of the talent in the larger New York City region, as we invest in future-focused industries in New York and in New York State, in collaboration with the local administration. I would note I had done a quick preview of it on my slide, but the RPA came out with a very interesting report on the economics associated with kind of the larger New York system and commuters and the economic benefits associated with that, which would be, I think, a really interesting read for this audience.
Great. And then just really quick one. What are you most cautious about and excited about? There's a lot obviously going on with this plan, but tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I am encouraged by how much progress has been made, and I'll say it for like the 100th time, but there is so much more work to do. So we have to advance, all of these initiatives. We really have to focus, on housing. It's so important, furthering what the city's trying to do, but also thinking about, what we can do legislatively in the next session in Albany. Even with all of the projects we're doing, we just have to kind of keep an eye not just on progress of the projects, but the actual outcomes. Looking at jobs and foot traffic and retail spend and quality of life. And so, I'm definitely focused on implementation of the initiatives, but also thinking about, what the actual outcomes will look like as we proceed. And so the jobs announcement was definitely an encouraging one, but again, say it one more time, there's more work to do.
We hear you, and that's why we're here. Would it be okay to share the presentation or a version of it?
Yeah, I think so. I'll double check, but really glad to be with you all today to talk about it. And in the meantime, just a reminder, please go to the new nypanel.com to dig into the report and check out some of our most recent announcements that I covered and more.
Well, thank you, BJ. Thank you to the ABNY Young Professionals and to the ABNY staff. This was really insightful, and we're really excited for what's to come.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, ABNY.